I recently read an editorial by New York Times writer Ross Douthat, who, besides writing editorial columns for the New York Times, published a book 10 years ago entitled Bad Religion: How We Became a Nation of Heretics. In his own words, Douthat says that secularization wasn't a useful label for the transition of a nation to one where John Lennon's song, Imagine, was its anthem. Douthat reasoned in his book this was so because, quote, American culture seems still fascinated with the figure Jesus, still in favor of divine favor and transcendence, end quote. But those interests, he observed, were much less likely to be channeled through Christian churches that maintain some connection to historical orthodoxies. Quoting, instead, our longtime national impulse toward heresy, the personalized revisions of Christian doctrine, finally has completed its victory over Christian institutions and traditions. For a surprising result, the Pew Research Center modeled potential futures for American religion. The results were astounding. In the 1970s and the 1980s, not surprisingly, around 90% of Americans identified as Christian. Now there are a majority of projections that in the next 50 years, that number drops below 50%. Douthat now editorializes 10 years later that American Christianity has become a church of self-love, with prophets like Oprah Winfrey or Joel Osteen, with churches of politics, with heresies such as a Christian nationalism on the right and progressive utopianism on the left. Douthat presaged the rise of Trump on the right. Trump's connection to Christianity was his attendance at Norman Vincent Peale's church. Douthat cites that Trump became Peale's right-wing heir, which were appealing to the disciples of nationalistic evangelicalism. On the left, however, it was more. I quote, liberalism ended up infused by heresy to a degree that even I didn't see coming. The idea of wokeness didn't figure in my book, Bad Religion, which came out before the new wave of campus activities, Black Lives Matter, #MeToo, and the diversity, equity, inclusion era. But the Great Awakening is a perfect example of Christian spiritual energies cut loose from orthodox belief. Social justice progressivism has to be understood, in part, as a spiritual descendant of Puritanism, end quote. Douthat concludes in today's editorial that Jesus is less culturally central and less necessary to religious entrepreneurs. He sees a post-Christian label as the new state of affairs. But he draws hope and uses the Christmas season as the metaphor. He concludes, I quote, Advent and Christmas aren't about trends extending as before. They're about rupture, renewal, rebirth. That's what American Christianity needs now. Now as ever. Now as in those first days when its whole future was contained in the mystery and vulnerability of a mother and a child, end quote.